Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Earrings Off. We want to invite you to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. You can find us on Facebook at Earrings Off Podcast and on Instagram at The Earrings Off Podcast.
Welcome to Earrings Off. I'm Lou.
And I'm Teresa. Let's get started.
Our guest today is Art Costello. Art is a speaker, mental health counselor with a degree in psychology, and a successful entrepreneur. I picked a few nuggets from his bio, including the following. Art has the ability to hone the expectations of people who have perhaps lost their joy, feel anxious or depressed, or can't seem to connect to their life's purpose, providing the balm necessary to heal and find new hope. He has devoted himself to helping people from all walks of life, individuals who have forgotten their childhood dreams, families that struggle with unresolved tensions and hurts, business professionals with the fire to connect their expectations with their achievements, and even athletes striving for their greatest potential. His strength lies in his unique ability to identify and assess what is preventing you from achieving your greatest desire, then provides options on how to best attain those goals and dreams. From his own life experiences and training, he has created a powerful program entitled Expectation Therapy that will guide you through the darker path of current inhibited belief patterns into the open air form of your best creative mind, unshackling previous limitations to release God's ultimate plan for your life. He offers wisdom as well as tangible tools for success that will help boost your confidence, encourage your journey, and affirm you as you begin to enjoy the freer, more productive life you've always longed for. Okay, let's get into the conversation. Well, hello, Art, and welcome to Earrings Off.
It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you for joining us. We're going to just jump right into the questions, right? So where did you get the idea for expectation therapy?
This is a good question. It started actually when I was 9 years old and abandoned as a child.
Oh, wow.
And I was trying to figure out, to go back a little bit, when I was, say, a newborn till 9 years old, I was led a pretty good life. My family was middle class and everything. And then all of a sudden at 9, my parents decided to move us to a rural upstate New York farm where our nearest neighbor was about 3 to 5 miles away. And they were in their 90s. So in essence, I didn't have anybody to play with or be around or anything. And out of my, what happened was it caused my parents almost to separate because my dad had to go to the city to work because he wasn't a farmer. And I have no idea why they moved us to this house that had no plumbing.
Wow.
Outhouse, just totally from the existence that I had lived in. And we were outsiders in this little farm town, and we actually were considered white trash, the way that we lived. And we were shunned by not only the kids at school, but by the teachers. I mean, they just really were not kind to us. And being that my parents had kind of separated, it just drove a bigger wedge in the community's view of us. You know, this is the late 1950s. And my mom took to running around and just left my sister and I at this farm. And to make the long story short, out of my desperation and loneliness, I went to a mountaintop and laid on my back next to the farm and had a conversation with God. and asked him what was going to become of me.
Wow.
And I said, I made this trip so many times. It was just over a couple years I made this trip. But one day I went up there, laid on my back, and the sky was moving above me, and I was just in a deep, contemplative, desperate prayer is the only way to put it. And I said, God, what is going to become of me? And I just heard this voice that just said, your job is just to be good. Just be good and do good and just do. Just become a doer. And after going up and that hill many, many more times, I finally figured out going in the Marine Corps at 17, when I graduated from high school, was how I was going to escape. And to make a really long story, I always relied on this voice that I had heard to do good. And that became my mantra, just do good and just always be doing. So I became very active and physical about my approach to life, very positive. So I moved through all of life and got married in college and played baseball, done everything that I'd ever wanted to do. And then in 2003, I had been married for 35 years to the love of my life. And we walked into a doctor's office here in Austin, Texas, and she was told that she had ovarian cancer. And our faith is strong, and we're believers and powerful in prayer and all those things. And we were hoping that she would make it, but in 2006, she died. She passed away from ovarian cancer.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So, well, everything happens with a purpose, and what happened to me is that we had a great relationship and it was strong. And I had promised her that I would carry on, and that she worried about me. She worried that I wasn't going to handle it well and all that. Told the kids, watch your dad. Well, I lived up to her expectation. I started falling apart and not living the way that I should have and had been and all that. And my kids came to me and said, Dad, you promised Mom you wouldn't do this. So that night out at our ranch, 20 miles west of Austin, Texas, I went out onto the lawn of that ranch and I laid on my back and I asked God what was going to become of me again. And I heard that voice speak to me because I was in another point of desperation and openness to hearing. And I heard that voice say, I've given you all the tools that you need. You just need to apply them. And out of that, I got up and I started writing. And out of that writing came the book Expectation Therapy, because I became very reflective and looked back on my life and all the goodness that has happened, all the great things, and always being the positive guy, always being very joyful and loving life and living it. And, I'm proud to say that I've always done exactly what I wanted to do. And it's because I've always had this expectation that everything was going to be okay. Everything is always going to turn out as long as we believe it. So I started doing my education has been, and my degrees are in psychology, but I had never used them. I had always been in entrepreneurial businesses and doing that kind of thing. So I really had never used my psychology. So I started applying all of the psychology principles in writing the book. I started doing a lot of research and started trying to really put science behind my premise on expectations, or my thesis, whichever you prefer to call it, about expectations. But I know one thing about expectations, that everything that we do in our life starts and stops with an expectation. It either starts with it or it stops with it. So the physics behind it is that everything in this universe operates on either the positive and negative forces and charges of electricity that go through here. So, that's where this kind of the science about it has blossomed into or out of it. But it's led me on a journey that's just been incredible, and I'm just blessed that 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 I've been able to walk the path that I have in the journey, and now I'm trying to help people as much as I can.
Okay. So, Art, what makes expectation therapy so effective?
The thing about our expectations, Aristotle and Plato wrote about them in 633 BC, before Christ ever came to this earth. And they identified that everything really does start and stop with an expectation. It's where our creativity starts. So when you look at it from the point of that everything starts with an expectation, it makes sense that if you look at it in a positive sense, positive things come out of it. But if you look at it in a negative sense, then the negative keeps coming. It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Mm-hmm. So our mindset becomes very, very important to the direction and the course of our lives. If you look at it from the sense of building a building, mm-hmm. you have to have a great foundation for a building. And our expectations, I believe, are the seed that God planted in us for creativity. And it becomes our foundation. So if we have an established core expectations that are non-negotiables, that are absolutely solid in our psyche, in our mind, in our mindfulness, in our actions, when we start having the literally thousands of expectations we have every day, because everything we do starts with an expectation. Mm-hmm. Every single thought we have. Mm-hmm. What separates expectations from anything else is an expectation that remains solely in your mind is a thought. It's not an expectation. It only becomes an expectation when you take that next step, which is action. Mm-hmm. And action is what creates the expectation to go either negative or positive. Mm-hmm. So it is the building block that we build our lives on, our expectations. So if we learn to manage them, because we all have expectations. I hear people say all the time, don't expect anything of me. I don't expect anything. I don't deal with it. I mean, there's people who are vehemently against anything to do with expectations. I say to them, you cannot live without expectation. You would absolutely be a stone. You would actually have no movement, because everything, I challenge people all the time. Tell me one thing that you do that is not based in an expectation. I challenge it. I mean, I've spoken at Harvard, I've spoken at universities all over, to faculties, to students, and everything. I have yet to have anybody identify one thing that we do that is not based in an expectation. Mm-hmm. So it's the fundamental block that starts all of our creativity or our negativity, whichever way you want to look at it. But it's the building block of everything that we do is our expectations, our creativity, our sensitivity, our mindfulness, everything.
Okay. Wow.
Can you give us some real life examples of how expectation therapy has overcome people's fears?
Sure. I've worked with everybody from athletes to people who have severe anxiety. Mm-hmm. And it's my belief that because everything starts with an expectation and also stops people. Anxiety is created. People who have anxiety create that by unmet or unrealistic expectations and are unfulfilled. And when you have unfulfilled expectations and it's a continuous cycle, then it actually changes the chemistry, the brain chemistry, and it leads to depression and I believe many different mental issues that arise. So by addressing it, people, I mean, I've worked with people who are manic depressive. I've worked with people that are anxiety ridden. Psychosis is another whole issue. People who are psychotic have gone, the brain chemistry has already changed. And I believe that medication and all that works. But I'm talking about people that have the everyday problems that we see, that start with marriages and all that. If you can get people to identify their core expectations and teach them how to manage all the expectations that they have of themselves, that it starts to create a very stable baseline for them to start really becoming creative and becoming the people that they want to be. And that's how it really helps. It just gives people a foundation to start building and becoming who they are meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. So, Art, who can benefit the most from this type of therapy, from expectation therapy?
Everybody on earth, because we all have expectations. And really, I know it sounds funny to say everybody, but if you think about it, I mean, housewives, husbands, children, I think children benefit the most. If we could start teaching our children how to manage their expectations at a young age, then they will flourish in life, because they manage them, and when they learn how to manage them, a lot of the disappointment that they experience goes away, because they look at everything as a learning experience. Part of what I teach is changing your mindset from something happening to you to something happening for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because when it happens for you, it becomes a learning experience. Mm-hmm. And when you have learning experiences, there's no failure. There's no failure in learning. You gain something from every experience that we have in life. And that is what the biggest benefit is in learning to manage your expectations, because when everything becomes for you instead of against you, that mind shift starts to happen, that change starts to come. So teaching children, but anybody at any age can learn how to manage their expectations. Anybody at any age, I don't care if they're 90 or they're 9. So teaching it is a really, really passion of mine, because I know what it's done in my life, and I know how it's changed my life, and I've seen it change other people's lives. And that's what makes it so powerful. That's what makes it so powerful.
Art, when you say you've seen how it has changed your life specifically, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, when I was 9 years old, and my sister and I were living at that farmhouse that was so dilapidated and run down, and we were ridiculed around town. One of the biggest lessons I learned out of that was that the expectations of other people didn't matter. What mattered is what my expectation was of myself. Now, I didn't know about expectation therapy at the time, but that's what I learned out of it, not to live to the expectations of other people. My expectations are what mattered most to me, and it's where I learned to protect myself. It's where I learned to heal myself. When people started calling my mother and father names, when they started calling me names, I mean, when I'm talking about not only kids, I'm talking about adults that were very abusive by today's standards, would be turned into child protective services.
Right.
It's how I learned to protect myself. I just learned that my expectations were what mattered. And by going to that hill, I set core expectations without realizing what I was doing. And that core was my faith, my integrity, and that everything, it really doesn't matter unless the only thing that matters is the actions that I produce. And that's what I'll be judged on until the day I die,
Right.
is what I do. It doesn't matter what anybody else says to you. It doesn't matter what everybody name they call you or I don't have to explain it to you in the audience. They know how people can be so cruel, how kids can be so cruel, especially when they know that somebody is less fortunate than them, whether it be physically in any other way that we can imagine. People can be very, very rude, and there's people who prey on people like that because they want to make themselves feel better.
Right.
That's
So,
right.
Yeah.
We know. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Okay. Okay.
It's making sense.
Yeah,
It is.
absolutely. Yeah.
So where can our listeners learn about expectation therapy?
Well, I guess the best place to learn is to get my book.
Yeah. Okay.
And
How do they get the book?
the book is actually in audio and hardcover and all that on my website. You can go and click on the link there and it will take you to that. It's theartofexpectation.com. And, that's anybody can get a hold of me there. I'm always available. I believe that the good Lord put me on the face of this earth to help everybody and anybody I can. So I make myself available to any means I can.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, thank you so much, Art, for joining us today to talk about expectation therapy. We know that your message will resonate with our audience. So again, thank you. And it's been our pleasure to talk with you today here on Earrings Off.
Thank you for the opportunity. And again, I will reiterate, I am here for you and everyone that listens.
Thank you.
Thank you.